PR firms that work in the crowdfunding space. Celery has not hired any PR firm, so I'd be careful to say I can't wholeheartedly recommend them because I haven't seen the true fruit of their labors. But I do know that they've been associated with successful crowdfunding campaigns, and I thought that it was an important piece of information that I shared.
And so, do you have any recommendations on founders working with PR firms and what we can do to kind of maximize their work, or what pitfalls we can try to avoid?
Yeah. Give them, so I talked about how you should speak to reporters and the kinds of stories that are interesting. I would say speak like that to your PR team. Give them the best information you have, the best stories you have. Because the more stories that you're involved with, the better the material they'll have to send to reporters. That's one way to maximize it. The other way is just to crack the whip. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Albert.
So when you see the list of publications that cover the topic area that you're in, there's like big giant things like New York Times or whatever, and small little blogs. So the question is, do you go after all of them at once and kind of stage it, or you get most traction with some of the smaller special interests?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, whatever works. The larger the publication, the more that reporter will be inundated with requests for coverage, right? So
they're probably going to check on you and they'll see if somebody else is writing about your company. If they don't find anything, they're going to ignore it.
Their bar, I wouldn't say that, but their bar is going to be a lot higher. You just, the more granular a publication gets, so I know you're in portable solar, right? So there are blogs that are devoted to solar, right? And there are blogs that are devoted to portable gear.
Yeah, but if you only have so many scoops that you can offer, you want to dole those out carefully, where you have almost anything.
Yes and no. Yes and no. I'd say get whatever press you can. If something's been reported in a small publication, don't think of what you have to offer is not necessarily a story. You have a good story, and good stories can be repeated, right? My personal opinion was that even if a story had been reported somewhere before, I could write it better, right? So it didn't exclude me from reporting that again, especially if I thought that my readers had not been exposed to that story. So that's where the fragmentation of the news market works in your favor. You can shop the same story multiple places. Like the New York Times doesn't know and doesn't care what's on the solar gear box, right? So you could sell that same story a couple times. And I'd work your way. I feel like, Reaganomics said there was a trickle-down effect. I'd say in the news there's a trickle-down effect. The more buzz you can create from the bottom, the easier it'll be to climb the ladder toward publications. So don't be too, don't guard your stories too closely, I would say.
How effective are stories around interesting stats? Like, say, for example, how OKCupid has all this interesting analysis of user behavior, human nature.
Yep. So OKCupid has a great blog, and that is just a wonderful example of data-driven stories, right? So I said you guys are probably sitting on data. Yeah, if you can spin that data into a story like OKCupid, you've got it. So you've cracked the nut. One of the reasons why OKCupid works is because stories about sex, right? Just to be perfectly frank, the saying at Gawker, which is run by Nick Denton, the saying at Gawker is sex sells, crime sells, sex, crime sell the best, right? So and the reason why is because people want to know what's hidden. Those are things that are sometimes considered shameful, right? Sex, crime, right? People want revelations, right? So if you can reveal to them something really basic about the genders, then you got a story. Yeah.
Do you have any advice for, say you're pitching a story and a lot of reporters want to know, what are your numbers? What if you're new and your pitch is trying to get press to have more users, and you don't want to volunteer that information?
Yeah, sure.
What do you have?
That's a great question. So, yeah, he just asked about data stories. What you're talking about is a momentum story. Reporters are looking for social proof that you're worth something. So, I mean, I take your best number. You know, if you have to give them something, give them your best. Sure. Yeah, that's good. But you also, you know, there are also interesting challenges in giving numbers. Something, it might be called signaling risk. You want to send a signal that's also sustainable. So if you're growing really fast, just so fast you don't think you can sustain it, you don't necessarily want to say, oh, it grew 300%. Right? Because in 5 months, if you're growing at 100%, investors will be worried, right? So you want to pick a sustainable number too, and it's always good to err on the side of conservative. I don't think anybody would fault you for that. So, but yeah, like.
Do you think that's a requirement for a lot of these reporters to write out?
It's one kind of story, but it's not a requirement. If you've got really interesting, fascinating human interest stories, numbers don't matter that much. Like Rose Broom, for example. Rose does handup.us. They help homeless people here in San Francisco. It's great. They kind of solve the problem of trust between donors and people asking for money by making the money flow through an account and then doling it out for Walgreens cards, blankets, that kind of thing. So everybody knows it's not going to maybe their addictions, for example. Anyway, Rose had a pilot program all last fall. It was maybe 60 people, So startup terms, no one would say, wow, those numbers are impressive. But she had a great human interest story, right? So if you've got customers, then I'd say just look at what problems you're solving. Look at the interesting stories you can spin out of that. Okay.
Yeah, so you were talking a lot about, it seemed like working a relationship with a reporter, developing over a long period of time for information.
Yep.
How many reporters are you actively engaged with and sending information to?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd say, I said pitches to a lot of reporters, and I don't think, some of them are not even opening like that, and that's just part of the job. So, and that'll be part of your job if you're doing it. I've got, I'd say, working relationships with maybe half a dozen, 6 to 10 of them, who I just have kind of trend ideas throughout the week, and I just think, oh, hey, there's this cool thing going on with tech. It has nothing to do, check it out, and that keeps a line with it. It reminds them you exist.
Right.
Yeah. Keeps the warm feelings. Yeah.
One more question.
Yeah.
I've heard that bloggers will run tests on subject line before they write articles. Will journalists do that? And will journalists take that kind of data for a product?
Oh, that's interesting. I don't think most journalists do that. And in fact, headlines are often one of the only things in a story that's out of the journalist, outside of the reporter's control. Like, editors are writing the headlines a lot of the time, right? That said, Upworthy and BuzzFeed are both kind of putting their headlines through many iterations. And those two places would probably be open to a wonky discussion of like what headlines are doing best, for sure. If you've got the science of headlines down, you may not need the press at all. So, are there any other questions? Yeah.
You talked about it's better to wait for something like a art launch or a poetry to sort of launch it and start the story, start the career.
Yeah. Okay.
You save all your stories for one kind of time and also.
Sorry.
Can you repeat the question?
I'll repeat it. So the question was, do you save all your stories for one period of time, or do you spread them out? Like, what do you do with the product launch, and do you ramp up to it, right? So I've got a couple of points to make on that. The first is, spread your stories out as much as you can. Each one is an excuse for more coverage, as long as it really merits coverage, right? So, like, if you've got a product launch, do the launch, and if you've got fundraising, don't announce it then. Announce it later, right? All of a sudden you've got twice the coverage, right? For any launch or for any kind of hard news that you're going to give to reporters, let them know at least 10 days ahead of time, right? Like, this is coming down the pipe. You don't have to give them all the information. Or you could just say, we're gonna announce our fundraising a week from Friday, right? Wanted to let you know. But like if you've got a working relationship with them and they're a busy tech reporter, then they'll slot out 2 hours that morning to write your story. That's what they did with us. So if you go to them just that morning and you say, oh, hey, we're launching today, they'll be like, hey, I've already got 5 stories to write. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, no, I was just saying thanks.
Yeah, sure. Cool. Anything else? Great. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much. It was very informative. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's not right.
Nice to meet you.
Appreciate it, Liz.
Hi.
He emailed me about from hardware.
Yeah.